literally tens of millions of people were murdered in the Soviet Union, Communist China, Cambodia, under the banner of this communist hammer and sickle. No prohibition on that.
Let's talk about Bill C-9. So this is a bill that many Canadians are concerned about. It is currently in committee. And you recently wrote a piece on this that viewers can take a look at in the Epoch Times. But what's your take on Bill C-9, John? Is it a good thing? Should we be concerned?
It's a step towards becoming more like the United Kingdom, where every day more than 30 citizens are arrested over what they say. And some people face jail time over offensive tweets. And police will come knocking on your door. And in some cases, they will not arrest you, but they will issue a warning. And they'll say, we saw your tweet about, denouncing high immigration levels, and it's offensive, and it's, it might cross the line. So we're not making an arrest, but we're issuing a warning that you pay attention to what you say. And so what Bill C-9 does, there's a half dozen or so problems with it. But the biggest one is that it removes a current requirement that has been in place for decades, where if the government wants to prosecute a Canadian over hate speech, they need the consent of the Attorney General of the province. So there's a review process. So it's not left purely to the local discretion of the local police, local Crown prosecutors, but they have to take it to the Attorney General, the Justice Minister of the province. And the Justice Minister looks at it, and he might give thumbs up, and the prosecution for hate speech may well go ahead. However, there's a review process which is going to influence the police and their behavior. So Bill C-9 says, let's get rid of this review process. So the local police in Ottawa, Hamilton, Halifax, Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, whatever, local police, local crowns can go ahead and prosecute Canadians over hate speech, and that could be online, offline. And so that's the first problem. The second problem is that the definition remains pretty vague, and I don't think you can really define with precision and clarity. Hate is an emotion. Two people can look at the same YouTube video or watch the same slogan being paraded like on a banner at a demonstration. Two people can look at the same thing, and one will say it's hateful, the other one says it's not hateful. Bill C-9, it's almost comical. They say, well, in order to qualify as hate, if you discredit, mock, ridicule, offend, or hurt the feelings of somebody, that's not necessarily hate speech. Dislike and disdain are not hate, but detestation and vilification are hate. So it's pretty vague, and it's also very political. In its introduction, the Justice Minister said, we are doing this to address rising anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, transphobia, and homophobia. And he says nothing about the dozens of Christian churches burned to the ground, completely destroyed by arson in Canada, completely silent. And I don't want to minimize the, vandalism of mosques or synagogues, but I don't think you could say that dozens of synagogues or mosques have been burned to the ground. So there's that discrepancy there, which I find disconcerting. So those are those are some of the concerns. Another indication of how political it is that it expressly bans the use of the Nazi swastika and the symbols and emblems. Symbols. Yeah, symbols of terrorism, terrorist groups. What is not banned is the communist hammer and sickle, which is the banner under which literally tens of millions of people were murdered in the Soviet Union, Communist China, Cambodia, under the banner of this communist hammer and sickle. No prohibition on that. Now, I'm a free speech guy. I don't think we should ban the display of any symbols, but look at that double standard, right? You can't display the Nazi swastika, but the hammer and sickle, yeah, you go right ahead, not a problem.
Well, the other issue is how many people are going to know the difference between the Nazi swastika and the Tibetan symbol? What happens there, right?
I hope the police are well educated, because there is a provision in Bill C-9 that says nobody shall be convicted of committing a criminal offense by displaying a swastika if doing so was for a valid and legitimate historical, educational, or religious purpose. So if you've got a textbook like William Shirer's book, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, which I think has a Nazi swastika on it, there's a lot of history books that have a Nazi swastika on it. Those are not going to be banned. And the swastika, because it is an ancient Sanskrit symbol for prosperity and good fortune, hopefully the police will be well educated enough to not go knocking on the doors of homes that have a swastika carved into the wood above the door. And I've seen this in Canada. There are Buddhists and Hindus who have that swastika displayed on their house, and so I hope I hope they're not going to get police knocking on the door, threatening them and telling them to take it down.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things in C9 that we also had an issue with, and many of them overlap with your concerns as well. The removal of the minister of having to actually give the thumbs up, I think, is a grave issue, because then it removes the political accountability from someone there, and at least that was a check and balance. And because if you're sitting there and you're just stamping yes, go and prosecute all of these people, that's going to be called out in the public, and there's probably going to be some backlash over it. Whereas if it's just contained within the machine of the justice system, there's no, as we say, throat to choke when something goes wrong, and there's no one person to hold accountable. So it's much more difficult to actually do anything about it. And the other thing about the symbols, from what I recall, is I don't think they're going to have to amend this bill if it does end up getting passed in order to add more symbols. So let's say they don't like what the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms is saying anymore. All of a sudden, somebody adds that into the list. Now you could be arrested, and you wouldn't even know until it was too late. So there's these types of aspects of this. And again, what problems are we trying to solve? The problem out there right now is they're not using the existing laws to arrest people that are committing these heinous acts. We already have laws to do that, and they're not picking them up.
Well, that's it exactly. The pretext is we got to protect access to houses of worship, and it has been a crime for decades. It is currently a crime to obstruct access to any building or structure, public or private. So if you, Ryan, are getting out of your car to walk into your home, if somebody gets between yourself and your house, and stands in front of your doorway, prevents you from entering your home, that is criminal conduct. You can call the police, and they would be charged with mischief, which includes vandalism and property destruction. Mischief also includes interfering with or obstructing or blocking lawful use and enjoyment of property. So it's currently, whether it's a synagogue or a mosque or a daycare center or a person's home or a public library, it's a criminal code offense to physically block and obstruct access to a building. So current laws can be applied and enforced. But with great fanfare, we get this old Bill C-9. We're going to protect people, protecting access to houses of worship. It's like, there's other crimes as well that are already on the books. I mean, intimidation, coercing somebody to do something that they otherwise would not have done. Uttering threats is a criminal code offense. So the laws are there. It is already a crime to obstruct somebody from going to their church, mosque, synagogue, temple, and lots of grandstanding. But yeah, we just need to enforce current laws.
Well, the good news is laws like this and these other ones, they're in committee, they're being quote unquote studied, and sometimes these laws can stay in committee for a long time. Sometimes they stay in committee to the length of when that government ends, and they never get the opportunity to get back to the House to even be voted on, to even go to the Senate. So our confidence is that this type of law is going to be studied a lot in committee over the next little while, and our hope is that it never sees the light of day, or even if it does, we see what happened to C9, what happened to C5, which it is pared down to such a degree that all of these horrendously, I would say, dangerous new proposals in the legislation are removed, and maybe we can have a law that actually does aim to solve a problem that exists without a solution.
Could not agree more.